Up next, we're going to be shifting focus to cyber intelligence, from evolving threat actor tactics to how agencies can use AI and predictive analytics to stay one step ahead. So in other words, let's get proactive. To help us unpack all that, I'm joined by Daniel Joyner, Director of CGI, April Lenhard, Principal Project Manager at Qualys, and Saeed Abbasi, Qualys Threat Research Group at Qualys. So thank you very much for joining me here today. I'm going to kick off by grilling you. Daniel, introduce yourself and share how your work connects to identifying or staying ahead of emerging cyber threats.
Yeah, absolutely. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, got some thumbs up. I got some blinding lights too. So
blinding lights and thumbs up is what we work with here.
So I'm Daniel Joyner. I am the Systems Integration Cybersecurity Director overseeing CDM, so that's Continuous Diagnostic and Mitigation. You heard some words from Richard Grabowski earlier today. So that's delivery across 77 federal civilian executive branch agencies, so FCEBs or FCEBs. My focus is on integrating scalable, threat-aware solutions that bring continuous visibility, vulnerability management, and compliance automation to mission-critical environments. So lots of words here. So that's done by bridging engineering and executive strategy. I help agencies operationalize threat intelligence to stay ahead of adversaries, enhance detection, and harden their defensive posture across both information technology and operational technology. As you can tell, I was reading a lot from my prompt here just because I don't like talking about myself. What I do and what I bring to the table is I show up, I'm kind of like Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse.
Oh,
I'm the individual that comes into the room. I make sure from executive strategy to the 100-foot view dealing with an engineer on a call that everybody leaves happy, that we understand a problem or an issue and we work towards an active resolution. So that's what I do.
Very much looking for the demonstration later. But April, your introduction, please.
Outstanding. Hi, everyone. My name is April Lenhard. I am a Principal Product Manager at Qualys, and I focus in cyber threat intelligence. How that relates to this panel today is when I am working at Qualys, really my goal here is to bring any piece of cyber threat intelligence to the fore. So Qualys has a plethora of different products and a plethora of different types of information. And what I'm doing is trying to bring those different pieces of threat intelligence and contextualize them and make them very accessible to our partners and to our clients. That's it for me.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Saeed Abbasi. I'm Vulnerability Manager, Research Manager at Qualys Threat Research Unit, and also I'm the product owner for our research group. And what our team mainly doing is zero-day hunting, writing signature for latest vulnerability and threats, and also we look into the data to see how we can anticipate the next threats or what is coming. And our team actually won a couple of awards. And we won 2 Pony Award, which is, you can think about.
Yeah, you can applaud for that. That's good.
For those that maybe not familiar with Pony Award, you can think of it as Oscar for movies.
Okay.
Pony Award is for security research and excellence. And we have 120 people across the world that are doing security research, and the result of that goes to our multiple products across Qualys to empower our customers to be on top of every single threat that is out there.
Perfect. Saeed, I'm going to stay with you. From your threat research perspective, what changes have you seen in how nation states or other sophisticated threat actors are operating, and what should government agencies be paying closer attention to?
Definitely.
Defending. Good answer.
Speed, pace, and the complexity. Mm-hmm. This is what we are seeing. And being reactive, it doesn't cut it anymore. The name of the game changed to being proactive. Mm-hmm. That is what we want to see everywhere, because we are seeing that a lot of threat actors are super quick, super fast, and now leveraging AI to their advantage, the same way that we leverage AI to our advantage for helping customers and defend. And what we are seeing is that the moment that you delay a patch, if there's a vulnerability, you are aware of it, and you're delaying a patch, this is a window of opportunities for attackers. Actually, 1 out of 160 vulnerability in last year was weaponized. It is a little over 0.5%. 1 in 160, right? And you need to know where are those vulnerability that they are weaponized. Plus, you need to merge that with the context and the threat intelligence in order to help you understand that is this vulnerability, is this threat related to my environment or not? Because if you focus on the rest of 159, you wasted a lot of time and effort for your organization. And that's what we mean by risk-based prioritization. You heard a lot about it today. And that means that you need to have a good way to find out if there is a vulnerability. Is it related to your environment? If it's related to your environment, how it's affecting, which business is affecting, and marry all of that with the threat intelligence that, for example, how mature is that vulnerability? Is it the exploit code available? Is there any chatter in dark web in regard to that? And these are all get together, for example, in our platform in TruRisk, that to help organization to find out, okay, I need to focus on this. And that's how they can achieve the best.
Yeah, so prioritization. Don't waste your time on the things that aren't as big a threat. But April, I feel like you might have some to add to that because you're the person who finds context, right?
So Saeed speaks with the might of the entire threat research unit. So he said it really, really well. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I would add to that, just in terms of nation states, is one thing that we've seen is kind of an increase in the attack surface, right? And so as you're seeing that leveraged, again, that translates to an increase in alerts. When you're seeing an increase in alerts, you're also seeing an increase in noise, which, again, to go back to Saeed's point, when you're seeing an increase in noise, you're not going to see that real increase in signal unless you have a way to really ruthlessly contextualize and ruthlessly triage. So that's another thing to look out for.
Like that ruthlessly prioritizing.
1000%.
Daniel, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're both spot on. The things I want to bring some kind of realism around are some of the several recent campaigns that we've seen either out in the news or open source intelligence. So Volt Typhoon in China use living off the land techniques, which is something that we're very, very familiar with. But they use these techniques to take a legitimate system and then they used it to evade detection. And then they started infiltrating US critical infrastructure. And so if that sounds familiar, you're probably thinking about the pipeline attacks that we had not too long ago, and you'd be absolutely spot on. The difference, though, is with artificial intelligence and with some coupling of machine learning now, what they're doing is they're taking this public data and social engineering, and they're targeting to filter and prioritize those entry points. Another one that's really good at this, and Russia and China go hand in hand when we start talking about these, especially whenever you start looking at the MITRE attack chain. But APT29 by Cozy Bear, Russia, they're known for credential theft and cloud persistence. Some of their recent activity has included multi-factor authentication fatigue attacks, token theft, and they were utilizing artificial intelligence to identify behavioral gaps to exploit identity systems. So it's very real, it's very dear, because we're using a cyclical set of tactics, techniques, and procedures that we've seen over the last 20 years or so. And they're now utilizing artificial intelligence to hedge the bet and increase the fidelity. Something that would take weeks and days and months to do, now they're able to do in a matter of minutes. The last one I'll leave you with is Sandworm, another Russian one. They traditionally focus on operational technology disruption, and their techniques are evolving because they're using artificial intelligence-assisted malware, and they're mutating it. And they're using telemetry obfuscation to make detection ICS environments much harder. All right, so I'm an informational technology, operational technology engineer. I can rattle off, RTUs and gateways and Siemens systems and all these other things, and how we utilize those out in the plant site. I can talk about, how I send an engineer out to a coal fire site and they're taking a scrubber laptop with them so they can go do an update. But at the end of the day, we're taking that information. They are now taking the attacks that are targeted. They're running them through additional algorithms to make themselves smarter, more harder, and less detectable. Because if something came out the last week, they're now learning from that and saying, let me throw this in my LLM, and then I'm going to take that tactic, technique, and procedure, and I'm going to mutate it slightly. So now I've obfuscated it even more, and now it's even harder to detect because the good guys take a lot longer to find those.
It's that speed thing. Both of you look like you want to say something. Saeed, please.
Yeah,
Sure, yeah, Daniel mentioned perfectly. One example that recently we saw, it was a Blackbuster ransomware group. It's a Russian-speaking gang. And around 3-4 months ago, they had some internal conflict. And one of them, they released around 1.3 million line of their internal conversation about their operation out there. And when we look into that, we are seeing that, yes, they are targeting misconfiguration and set of vulnerabilities. And for example, they are not looking at 270,000 vulnerability that is out there. We found out that they are talking about 62 in particular CVEs. That's it, and plus weak authentication and RDPs being open. And when we go and take a look at those 62, we find out that, yes, these 62, it's known to us, is known to CISA, is part of CISA KEP, and 10 of that 62 is end of life, end of support. And we are still seeing those vulnerabilities being flagged in different environments. It means that if you have a good asset management, what you can see is way in advance before that device going end of life, end of service. You can see that, okay, end of this year, this will be out of service, and I have to plan ahead to buy a new one. And when we are looking at the vulnerabilities and how being remediated, we are seeing a long tail on those type of vulnerability because, yes, they know there's a vulnerability, but they cannot do anything about it. And buying a new firewall or a VPN service is not easy to do. And just a minor note in regard to AI and how they are leveraging. Today, when we are looking at the malwares and debugging those malwares, we are seeing that this is not a work of someone under pressure, because everything is very organized, the code is very clean, the naming conventions are perfect, and this is a tell that they are leveraging Gen AI in order to help them write those, as DJ mentioned, much faster and put it out there. And that's quite fascinating to see how they are leveraging to their advantage.
Yeah. April, did you want to add to that? I said it all, no notes.
I know we've got a lot to cover, and I know that we're going to get into it. So for now, good to go.
I want to just add one last thing.
One last thing.
I like the talk. I apologize.
That's why we invited him.
Thank you, of course. So one of the things I would add is nation states have long relied on stealth, right? Long dwell times, identity abuse. What started to change is how more scalable, automated, and precise these operations have become. And that's largely due to advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning. We used to think technology, if it lasted 10 years, when I worked in the energy utility sector, I would go out to plant sites, hydroelectric dams, and we would praise that this has been in operation since 1962. And I would talk to an engineer and they'd go, I hate this new equipment. It's energized now. It's some guy at the Rock down the street. And he doesn't understand because the technology is changing and it's here rapidly changing. With leaps and bounds in artificial intelligence and machine learning, it's not tomorrow, it's not 6 years from the road, it's, we're already behind the curve. And that's not doom and gloom, we have technology out there that's going to help propel us forward, and AI is a wonderful thing to be able to utilize. But as Saeed was just talking about, you can also see how wonderful we look at it. My team will look at that and go, that's great, it can do this, and look what it can do. I turn around and I look at something and I go, look at what I made it do. And that's what the attackers are doing. They're turning around and saying, here is everything at my disposal, everything that I commonly use. Here's what other individuals are utilizing. And now you're no longer able to differentiate, is this Volt Typhoon from China or is this Cozy Bear from Russia? Because they're blending techniques. And that makes it a lot harder to go through and analyze.
So you queued me up perfectly. So thank you for that. But we have seen a shift from lone wolf hackers to highly organized groups that collaborate and share resources. They don't have a problem with information sharing and information exchange. So April, I think I'm going to start with you on this. How is the use of AI amplifying their capabilities, and what kinds of AI-driven attack methods are becoming more common?
I'd say there are three main things. So with AI, you're seeing an increase in speed, in scale, and in sophistication.
So the three terrifying S's, basically.
The three terrifying S's. Exactly like both of you guys were just saying. And those are fantastic case studies to talk about how you can have, you can say, okay, you know, we have this hash, we're going to use detection heuristics, not a problem. Oh, we're just going to change it ever so slightly. If you are looking at it from an attacker mindset, it is very easy to start evading those detections if you're using an LLM. If you are, I've got a couple different things in here in terms of like intelligent phishing, in terms of altering payloads, in terms of like coordinating botnets or DDoSing. It is so easy to take any of those three and embrace your villain era if you were an attacker. So any one of those is difficult, but if you have all three of those together, it is absolutely a game changer.
Saeed, would you like to weigh in on that?
What April mentioned is exactly right. And the other thing that we are keep seeing is AI bring the bar so down that anyone with some level of understanding can start putting things together. And it could be very targeted phishing or perfect website, or it could be leveraged for writing malwares, right? And the way that AI help almost every single part, both on a crime and cybercrime and defender side, help is when we are seeing that attackers are taking advantage of that. We have to leverage the same set of techniques and knowledge to help us in proactive defense. How are we going to use that? The way that we, for example, integrate that in our TruRisk, the way we pull information from every single source that we have from threat intel, plus the asset context. The context is really important to what are those devices or what are those vulnerabilities. Is it important to an organization? How much of value being assigned to that? And leveraging all of that together to come to a number, say, this is your risk score, and you need to worry about that because we went over every single element and put it all together, leveraging AI, and to help you navigate this risk better.
So I'm hearing a couple things. So we have, what were the three terrifying S's? Speed, scope, and scale, right?
Speed, scale, and sophistication.
Sophistication, sorry. And then the barrier for entry is lower than ever. Daniel, your take? Make me feel better.
Yeah, so I wish I could give warm fuzzies here. One of the things that I would be remiss to say is back when I started my career, it was trial by fire, right? You learned on the go, you saw things, you had some applications. I remember the first time I laid hands on Encase as an example, where things just opened the door and it made me pop and had a huge wow factor where I turned around and I was like, man, that made it so much easier. I was working one time, I'm not going to say where, but I was working one time on DNS exfiltration. And so I was going through, I had taken the packet capture, I was looking at the data and I was like, man, those jumbo frames look weird. What? And it's at the perfect size, but that's not where it needs to be. And so I started looking at the DNSXL and I went through my entire, grabbing the packet capture, deobfuscating data and looking at everything going, oh, well, they are exfiltrating data and here's what this looks like. And I look at that and a couple years later, we had some things going on with some three-letter agencies where CyberChef came out. And for those who understand CyberChef, it made the world a lot easier. And so the topic here today is threats and cyber intelligence, staying ahead of emerging risk, right? So how do you stay ahead of those emerging risks without being somewhat in the dark and being okay with being in the dark, right? At the end of the day, when CyberChef came out, I could take basics for decoded information really quickly, throw it in, pop it out and not have to do anything, and it was just there for me, right? It made it so much simpler. So throughout my conversations today, you'll hear me talk a lot about artificial intelligence. And so the thing I'll leave you with is artificial intelligence enables attackers to automate reconnaissance by mining public data, scanning for exposed systems, or profiling targets across social platforms. One emerging method is a large-scale phishing automation that April was just talking about, where generative AI is used to craft highly believable messages that bypass email filters and social defenses. And so if that also sounds familiar, think of the war in Ukraine at the moment and pivot back to some Russian intelligence that came out a couple months ago where they said, well, really joint effort, but Russia came through, did a very crafted, automated generative AI phishing campaign and said, I need you to lay down your arms, need you to lay down your weapons, and that was sent out to troops. And the troops were turning back and going, no, I don't think this is real. Zelensky came out and said, no, this isn't real. But those are the types of things that we're seeing today. And it's just like CyberChef, right? It's just like the DNS exfil. You know, I use tools to make my life easier, but sometimes the tools that I'm using to make my life easier, where's that data going? Who's it going to? And if I have a large language model that I'm creating in-house and I'm putting all of my information in, who then is going to have access to that information, depending on if they're living off the land, if they're doing other things, then do they now have access to things that I'm using to protect?
So, April, how can public sector agencies apply threat intelligence in a way that meaningfully improves threat detection, response, and overall risk posture, you know, especially in changing environments?
That's a very good question. This is going to be a little bit interactive, and I know it's after lunch, so I know that's a whole thing. But by a show of hands, who here has been personally victimized by getting too many alerts or has a team that has at one point had too much noise and not enough signal? Anyone in the room by a show of hands?
It's hard to see with the lights, but I see a lot of hands going up here.
Yeah, I see a solid amount of hands going up. So a lot of us have this common problem of essentially needing to have more context included in trying to prioritize and trying to triage. And I'm also an EMT, so like if you call 911, I'm the person who will come with the ambulance. And so triaging is a really, really big theme that I try to bring forward with cyber threat intelligence. And so one thing that, especially at Qualys, we're really leaning into is the idea of a managed risk operations center. Think of that as you take a SOC and you then say, I'm going to contextualize what matters to me, what matters to my environment, what matters to my agency, what matters to my company, and take just those threats based on what is not just possible, but it is also probable. So if you're taking that context and you're managing it by that, you are able to, again, to go back to ruthlessly triaging, you're able to cut down a lot of that extra noise and just be left with the signal.
Saeed, you look like you might want to add something to that.
Sure. We collect a lot of data, anonymized data, and last year we looked into CISA KEV vulnerabilities. Our data set was around 550 million record, just a little over 500 million records. And these are the vulnerabilities that came to CISA known vulnerability list during 2024. It's not all the vulnerability in CISA KEV. And when we look at that vulnerabilities, we are seeing that it takes the attackers 5.5 days to weaponize these vulnerabilities. Weaponize, that's the key word. It means it's not a proof of concept. It is part of a malware, or it's being used in a ransomware operation. It is actually the part of the code that it make every single one of us worry that this might use against us. It is weaponized. And it takes them 5.5 days to weaponize these vulnerabilities. And we take that, we take a look at to see how our customers are taking care of those vulnerabilities. How long does it take? It is 10 days typically. And there is around 5 days of window of exploitation that the attackers are ahead. That is the part that April mentioned that we need to have a better context and risk-based prioritization in order to help our customers fix those vulnerabilities faster. We didn't stop there. We take a look and see how was the curve of getting these vulnerabilities fixed over time. And we immediately seeing that 20% of our customers are already fixing those vulnerabilities before it's being part of a CSACF. And then we will get back to that. But we are seeing that around 90-day mark, we are seeing that 95% of the vulnerability part of that group is fixed. But even that 5%, it translates to 25 million open vulnerabilities. Weaponized vulnerability open. And that is the part that the organization needs to leverage a prioritization method or a framework in order to help them navigate which one to look for and which one need to be prioritizing, getting fixed. If they can apply the patches, perfect. If they cannot, they have to go apply some mitigations. It could be temporarily isolate the device or run some script to disable that service. Obviously, that part, the mitigation part, it won't help them with their compliance. They still need to go fix it, but their risk is going to be reduced.
That makes sense to me. So let's talk about defense. We've talked a lot about how AI is going to poke holes in everything, helps with the speed, helps with the sophistication. But AI isn't just a threat vector, it is a tool for defense. How are you seeing AI used to strengthen cyber intelligence and automate threat detection in ways that feel meaningful? Daniel, I'm going to start with you.
All right, well, it's probably a good thing. So I'm going to go back to artificial intelligence, right? Because that's really what it is. It's not just a threat vector, but how are we utilizing it to move on to the next area? And so I'm going to go back to noise and correlate signals, right? At the end of the day, artificial intelligence allows us to turn our mean time to respond really, truly to seconds and minutes. And if you're a CISO, if you're a C-suite executive, we've always talked about this for as long as I can remember. I don't need weeks, I don't need months to mitigation. I need to be able to respond quickly, fastly, and as soon as humanly capable, right? If I have a 24/7 operations, or if I'm just rolling in at 8 a.m. in the morning and I'm out by 3 p.m. in the afternoon or 5 p.m. in the afternoon, depending on shift work, I need to be able to automate that and turn that mean time to respond into actual seconds and minutes. And so with artificial intelligence, that allows us to really, like I said, cut through the noise, correlate signals, and take actions faster, not just detect faster. And that's the name of the game here, right? When paired with threat intelligence and mission context, which is critical, it's accelerating defense in a way that finally matches the speed of modern attacks. The phishing campaigns that we see today, as a rough example, used to be you would train your individuals that were more functional than technical, look for the misspellings, don't open up the header, do header analysis. That's no longer what we're doing anymore. Instead, you're looking at that as it hits your spam filter and you're going, it's crafted very well. There are no misspellings. I can't see the domain because it came through my box in such a way that it strips a lot of the information out. So header analysis is mute. So then you have to trust yourself at the end of the day and go, is this where I need it to be? But with artificial intelligence, right, we're able to take the part of the threat landscape and turn it into a critical ember of defense, especially at scale as we operate. Artificial intelligence, in my opinion, is most meaningful, I'm seeing, in reducing time to detect and time to respond by automating what used to take hours and sometimes weeks. And I'll leave you with that as a thought, because it really is that mean time to respond. And so just as threat actors are turning the table and saying, let me throw the kitchen sink at it and let me see how I can mutate what this is doing to give me a different derived outcome, we're able to do the exact same thing to turn some of those things into a response capability that says, well, I'm not just correlating at a micro scale, I'm bringing this up to a macro level, and I'm able to take my entire knowledge base, my other tactics, techniques, and procedures that I may or may not share to other entities, and I'm building that in-house to be able to target and turn my mean time to respond into seconds and minutes.
April, do you want to take a stab?
Yeah, so what I mentioned before about how AI can be leveraged maliciously, I'm going to Uno reverse that and also say it can also be used as a defense mechanism. You have speed, you have scale, and you have sophistication. So we are looking at leveraging that inside of our tools in a way that, again, contextualizes, in a way that makes it easier for us to respond, in a way that makes it easier for us to triage, in a way that really, really cuts down. We were looking at a few graphics earlier, especially, again, talking about ETM, Enterprise Threat Management, where you see taking, like Saeed was talking about, you take an entire exploit list. You even then take CISA Kev. And then from there, what you want to do is you really just want to look at not just the possibilities, but the probabilities. So again, going back to, again, and pulling from these threads of like MTTD, MTTR, that's really what we want to focus on. And we can use AI to do those things.
Saeed?
The AI today is very helpful for different organizations, and we all using it on a daily basis. And what we are seeing in past 16, 18 months is that very often the AI tools, they help us, for example, build a chatbot in 5 minutes. It's both victim and at the same time, the attack vector as well. And we need to be really careful about that. And sometimes if in an organization, in an environment, in a network, we are not knowing that what kind of tools we have, what LLMs do we use, or where are implemented, right? That's why at Qualys, we have over 1,500 different signatures that it just look for vulnerable AI tools and AI software and things like that. That is helping different customers to find out, okay, yes, I have this software that my developer are using it, and then later they're going to ship it to production, and let's find out where they are. And it is in every single vendor we are seeing. For example, for Microsoft, that they release patches monthly. In past 1 year, we are seeing 14 different components that we never seen before, that it is being used for AI in particular, that they release vulnerability for that. And these are very important to find out in the environment, plus have a way to test them, right? Of course, we have Total AI that it poked the LLMs, it looked for different components, and it's very important to, first of all, have a good inventory of all your AI workloads in order to, if you want to protect it, you at least need to know if they are existing in your environment or not. And that's, I believe, an important factor in the risk for different organizations.
Y'all got to have a visibility into a lot of things. I built a very long checklist of stuff for you guys to follow up on when you leave here today. But Daniel, based on your work with public sector clients, what are some of the most critical steps that they and their partners can take to defend against these new AI-enhanced cyber threats? Just a short question.
Short question. Yeah. So there's a lot, actually. So I'll leave you with 2 critical steps first, and then I'll kind of talk about some of the nuances briefly before I hand it over to the rest of the panel here. So operationalize your threat intelligence. Don't just collect the indicators of compromise, right? Your IOCs. That's what we're used to doing. You know, back in the day, when I first started, it was, I need all the data. I don't have the analysts to be able to come through the data, but I need all the data. It's not the sexy 6 from Microsoft that I'm worried about anymore. If you remember what those were, right? It's where I need everything. And so now operationalize your threat intelligence, not just the IOCs. Map them to high value assets. This is also critical, right? So if you know a high value asset, a high value target, you already have that a part of your FIPS-FISMA boundary, then you have a leg up amongst other individuals who don't know that. And those are the individuals that I'm going to target if I'm an attacker. And so then correlate that with your mission critical services, right? And real-time telemetry. Intelligence should be able to drive the detection logic, influence access decisions, and inform response playbooks. So we're talking SOPs, we're talking playbooks of, if I have identity access management and I'm using Okta as my identity federated service provider, I'm using a YubiKey or a PIV card to be able to log in. I'm logging here, what is my high value asset? What is my high value target? And what are they susceptible to? And what is the risk base there? And then how can I use that? The other is invest in AI powered detection and automation. It's coming. There are lots of vendors that are out there at the moment. I know I'm here at the Qualys. I'm probably not supposed to say this, but I truly am tool agnostic and vendor agnostic. And what I mean by that is there is always going to be a handful of tools that you can go out to Gartner and say, give me a Magic Quadrant, and I want to be able to see the tools that fit this need. And so at the end of the day, you have plenty of things that will offer that for you, but it's up to you to determine how you use it. It's not something that we just throw on the network and expect it to sit there and it's going to deliver us results and protect us. You actually have to put some thought into it and drive those things. The volume and speed of AI-driven attacks, they just can't be countered manually, right? They're changing, they're mutating. As soon as one is out there, somebody else has already caught it and they're already mutating it. And they're giving you another campaign before you can even build it better, smarter, and faster, right? It's not the $1 million person anymore. So defending against collaborative AI-enhanced cyber threats require a shift in posture from compliance-driven security to adaptive intelligence-informed defense. Threats are faster and more coordinated. Our defense must be too. This means actionable intelligence, AI-enabled automation, identity-centric controls, and integrated telemetry. The focus now isn't just prevention, it's speed, precision, and resilience. As we go into this next 3 to 5 year of AI growth, it's going to be explosive.
April, did he leave anything for you?
When I specifically think of the threats, the public sector, and I think of how it is different from private companies that we would otherwise handle. One thing that really stands out to me is mission. So when I am thinking about kind of uniquely how the public sector would counter these threats, I'm thinking about how they would want to map their risks specifically to mission impact. To me, that would be kind of my major recommendation, is to make sure that you are setting yourselves up so you are capable of not just mapping, like we had been talking about earlier, risks to possibility and probability, but also so you have the ability to do it specifically to mission impact, since that is such a pivotal part of the missions and agencies that you guys are a part of.
Saeed.
I think they said it all.
They got it all. All right. We're running out of time, so we're going to do lightning round here, so short answers. What is one emerging risk or blind spot that the public sector has that keeps you up at night, and what should they do about it? Saeed, I'm going to start with you.
I believe they need to be proactive, and they need to find out the things that is completely related to their environment, and they need to have a very good understanding of their assets. In order, they cannot protect anything that they are not aware of, right? And I believe having a good inventory of every single product or the assets that they have, along with a good mature vulnerability management that integrate patching and isolation and mitigation, that will help them speed up their proactive defense very fast.
I like that. April.
Leveraging context. Making sure that you're able to map your systems and your assets specifically to context and to mission outcomes is going to be so critical.
So you got to know what you're protecting, and you got to know why, right?
Absolutely.
Daniel.
I'm going to go with C, Alex. It's integrity of machine-generated data for me. As AI and automation become embedded in our systems, the risk isn't just malicious access anymore. It's subtle data poisoning, telemetry manipulation, model drift that quietly undermines trust and decisions. We can get ahead of this now by validating the provenance of the data, implementing controls for artificial intelligence for governance, not just a compliance checkbox. It's very important. There's a distinguish there. And deploying anomaly detection, not just for security events, but for unexpected shifts in system behavior around your machine learning and artificial intelligence.
All right, good job, everyone. That is the end of our time together. So Daniel, Saeed, and April, you've been amazing. Let's applaud for them, everybody.
Thank you.